Again, appreciate everybody coming tonight. Enjoy being here with you on Wednesday night. I enjoy it more when I'm sitting where you're at. Somebody else is up here, but Isaac caught me in a weak moment. You know, when they say they're having a baby, it's hard to tell them no. He's going to have to come up with something better next time, though, I promise you. So, years ago, it seems like another lifetime now. Before I was in real estate, I worked in manufacturing. And I know some of you guys are manufacturing, Tim, and maybe a few others, and my heart goes out to you because I left work every day just shaking and tore up to pieces. But my first job in manufacturing, one of the lines I was responsible for, I was at Cosmolab, and one of the things they made was eye and lip pencils, the little wood pencils, I guess mascara and stuff. And one of the departments I was over was the paint and dip department. And they painted them, they came down a conveyor belt, and they pushed them through a paint pot that had washers on it, and the machine pushed them through those washers, and you had to put several coats on. And one of the things we had to do was check, we had a standard. If it was supposed to be Jordana Ruby Red, then we had a Ruby Red that had been approved by Jordana, and when we painted them, we had to match them up to that standard we had and make sure they matched. And of course, you couldn't get them to match exactly the same every time, so it just had to be close. So the first time, because the washers would wear different rates, and you know the paint, depending on how hot or how cool it was inside and humidity. If you work with paint, you know it's when you're putting 4 or 5 coats on, the wood slats were different, a lot of different variables. So we never got them exact, but when we got them ready, we had to get quality control QC to come and approve them. And so they would take the one off the board, and they would take it, and you know we started out with one standard taped to the board, and anytime they approved one, we taped it to the board. So we started out with a Ruby Red, Jordana Ruby Red, and we'd make a run, and they would come down there, and we'd argue, and they'd finally accept it, and it'd be a little bit lighter, but they would take it. Next time we did another run of it, they'd come down there and we'd say, well, here's the standard, and here's the one you approved last time, and this one's pretty close to the one you accepted, and we could usually get them to take it again. Well, I was over the department for several years, and this was not my doing. I was trained this way, okay? But we had 15 pencils. Lisa's laughing because she worked at Cosmolab. She knows what we'd have 15 pencils taped to that standard board, ranging from bright red to light pink, and they were all acceptable. You couldn't hardly paint a pencil that wasn't accepted. You know, and it was a running joke in manufacturing about, you know, why we even bother sometimes with that QC part of it and stuff, because you could get just about anything accepted because we deviated from the standard, and then next time we compare it to the one from the time before. And so before long, it looked nothing like Jordana Ruby Red. You know, and that's funny when we're talking about manufacturing, but the thing is, I was thinking about it, sometimes we do that as Christians. You know, I hear Christians say all the time, and I've been guilty of it myself, of saying, you know I don't do exactly what I should, but I'm not as badass, and fill in the blank. And we may mention a certain act that is worse than what we're doing, or we may mention even a person that we think has gone further off the track than we are, and we say, you know what, I know I'm not doing what I should, but you know I'm doing better than this. And we somehow as Christians sometimes think that justifies the path that we're on. Another thing I learned when I was in manufacturing is, you know, I was going to school for business. They made us study a lot. A guy called Edward Deming. If you're in manufacturing, you've probably heard that name. He was he was an American, but he was going around to American companies and telling them how they ought to do their quality departments and stuff, and nobody would listen to him. So at the time, Japan was known for making garbage, but he went to Japan and they listened to him and basically turned all their manufacturing around and surpassed the U.S. for a time. And one of the things he taught was zero defects, because that's the other thing when I was in manufacturing. We always had an acceptable, what we call cull rate or scrap rate. And it depends on the process. It may be 1%, 1 out of 100, 2 out of 100, 3 out of 100. And that was all our processes would yield. And if they were yielding no more than 2 or 3 bad ones, we considered that okay, and we kept running. And then what happens, of course, if it runs 4 or 5, you say, well, that's not that bad, we're close. And then if it runs 6 or 7, we're close. And what he taught is you shoot for 0. You shoot for perfection, knowing you're not going to obtain it. But if you shoot for 0, then there's no question that 2 and 3 and 4 is not acceptable. And by doing that and a lot of other things, he was able to turn them around. And I think the Christian life should be more like that. We know as Christians that Christ is to be our standard. We know that Jesus is perfect, and we know that we're not going to obtain that. But we know also that that should be our gold standard, so to speak. That should be what we're shooting for as Christians. But that's not just human nature a lot of times. We're good about fudging and stuff. I'll never forget, Alex had Miss Kathy for math. She came in one night, this has been years ago, of course, and she was laughing and said, let me tell you all what happened in class. Said, I put a problem on the board, and it said if the speed limit is 55 miles an hour and you're going the speed of, and it had some formula they had to work out to determine what speed would they get a speeding ticket. And but she gave us some time to work it, and she asked, who's got the answer? And she said, Alex raised his hand, said, I got the answer. And she said, Alex, would you get a speeding ticket? He said, no, ma'am. She said, Alex, what did you get as the answer? And he told her the answer, and he got it right. He got 59. She said, Alex, you got it right. Why did you say you're not getting a speeding ticket? He said, because my dad said if you're not going more than 5 over, you won't get a speeding ticket. That's kind of how we look at things. We would be upset if we were going down the road out here, and of course the speed limit's changed in Chapel, it's 30, and who goes 30 down the National Highway? If I ask for a show of hands, I doubt there's one. We got one person. Two. We got 2 people. Y'all the ones that ain't never behind me. Yeah, we ain't in church. I ain't gonna call you on it today, but I don't ever see y'all going down the road like that. We think fudging some is okay a lot of times. Turning the Bibles, if you have tonight, to Genesis chapter 13. Because I think as Christians, we need to take another look at this and how we look at things sometimes. Because so many times we say that close is okay. And with something as important as our faith, I think we need to back up, and I'd like to spend some time taking a look at that tonight. Genesis 13, verse 12. I'm not going to go through the whole story. You guys are very familiar with Lot and Abraham and what happens in this story, how their flocks both grow and they prosper, and the land won't hold both of them. And we know that Abraham comes and tells Lot, you pick which way you'll go and I'll take what's left. And we know that Lot makes the choice. He takes the land towards Sodom and Gomorrah, which we know is very sinful. We know how all that turned out. But here in verse 12 it says, Abraham dwelled in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent towards Sodom. There's so much more sometimes I like to know, and we only have what the Bible tells us. We assume that Lot probably knew what Sodom was like. You can't live anywhere close to a town, a lot of times without knowing what it's like. I'm sure word had gotten around. He probably knew what it was like. And I imagine probably in his tent the conversation went something like, well, we can be close to that, it'll be convenient, but we won't be a part of it. And then we know, a little while later we read about Lot, and he's in Sodom, and we read about what's going on with the guests in his house, and the men are demanding they be brought out for them. And we see how bad it's got and how quickly it fell away. And I doubt Lot even thought about that when he first pitched his tent towards Sodom. But we do the same thing so many times as Christians. I feel like we play with fire. I'll talk about this more later, but I know that we have to be in the world but not of the world. But so many times we get too close and we end up getting burned because of it. That passage I want to read is in John 15, 19. John 15, 19. If you were of the world would love his own. But because you are not of the world, but I have chosen you out of the world, therefore the world hateth you. The Bible tells us we're supposed to be in this world, but not of this world. That's a hard thing to do as a Christian. And there should be a huge difference when people look at us in the world that they can see. I'm going to give my age away here, but when I was thinking about this, I remember a cartoon. So that I know that this is resonant. Do any of you remember Pepe Le Pew, the skunk? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Those cartoons, I always loved them because he was always chasing this cat that he thought was pretty, and she'd always end up with a paint mark down her back, making her look like a skunk, and people running from both of them because they couldn't tell the cat from the skunk. Sometimes I think that's how it is as Christians. Sometimes for the world, trying to tell the difference between a Christian is like trying to tell the difference between a skunk and a cat with a stripe down its back. It's that close. As Christians, the difference ought to be the difference between a cat and a lion. It ought to be a huge difference between us and the world. And the world shouldn't have to look that close, that hard to figure out what the difference is. We have an overwhelming desire to be like the world, but at the same time, we know better. It's always been this way. If you go back to the Bible, 1 Samuel chapter 8, we start reading about the Israelites. And, at this point, we've been studying about the judges and stuff they've had, and they decide they want a king. And the reason they give, God tells Samuel, said if they get a king, then he's going to basically enslave their sons for war, and he's going to take the daughters to be bakers and this and that for them. It's going to be a heavy burden on them, and you're not going to like it. And they come back again and tell Samuel, we don't care. We want to be like the other nations. We want a king. Give us a king like the rest of the nations have. They wanted to be just like everyone else. And again, God gives them this gives Samuel a very vivid description of what it's going to be like. But they don't care. But it's so much, I think, not that uncommon from how we are today. Many times we are modern day Israelites. We know it's not right, but we want to be like the world. So we rationalize. We say, I'm not like the world. That's when we say, I'm just a little bit better. And I want to look at some examples of what this looks like in our life. And I've got a couple, and you may have someone as well. Many times I think in our speech. In your Bibles, turn to, I'm just going to look at one or two of these, but turn to Colossians chapter 4, verse 6. In Colossians 4:6, it says, let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer every man. That's the standard that the Bible gives. And when I was looking at this up, it gave passage after passage of how our speech ought to be, how we ought to measure our words. And it gave a lot of passages about the tongue and how we ought to bridle the tongue, think about what we're going to say. The Bible is very clear. Anybody can read these passages and come to a very clear understanding of what the standard is for Christians in their speech. But then we look at the worldly standard, and what does the world say? If you turn on the TV, the news, or just listen to everyday speech, you'll hear everything under the sun. Programs that are now rated PG, a lot of times I don't even want to sit and watch with my daughter that's in 8th grade. They're considered PG by the world standards, but they're not even fit a lot of times for viewing. And sometimes they're Christians like many times, and I've heard these examples I give, I've heard, and I'm sure you have heard too, I've heard people that call themselves Christians used. I've heard a Christian tell me, say, well, I cuss sometimes, but I don't take God's name in vain. And I think that's, again, somebody asked me if I'm going to step on toes. Stan always said, don't let me step on your toes, move your toes. If that describes us, guys, we need to do something different. If the standard is, in my speech, I'm okay if I don't take God's name in vain, then I need to take a long, hard look as a Christian at my speech. Something is wrong. If the only claim I can make is that I don't take God's name in vain. But in so many instances in our lives, it feels like that's what we've done. And is that really the standard? And if it is the world going to see any different in Rob Huey at work and when they see me out? If that's the standard, is my life going to be acceptable to my Savior if my standard is not taking God's name in vain? I see it also in our dress. Turn to 1 Peter chapter 3. 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 3 and 4. Whose adorning let it not be that outward adorning of plaiting the hair and of wearing of gold or of putting on of apparel, but let it be the hidden man of the heart, and that which is not corruptible, even the ornament of a meek and quiet spirit, which is the sight of God, which is in the sight of God of great price. Again, I wish I could have all our young people back in here, again, and not just speaking to our young people because it applies to us all, but I wish that we could get this through to everybody, what it says that we ought to be noticed for. And I feel for young people because I think it gets even harder and harder with what they have to deal with in our world with social media and so many other things. But we look at what the standard here is in the Bible, and we can turn to many passages again. The Bible sets a very clear standard about what our dress ought to be as Christians, how we ought to dress modestly, how we ought to glorify God with our bodies. And yet, I was scrolling through some social media this week, as we're all, I guess, inclined to do. There's nothing wrong with it if it's used right, but so many times it's not. And I saw a picture of a young Christian lady that if I saw one of my kids like it, I would run to cover them up with something. And the first thing that popped in my mind is, does her mother know she's posted this? And I'd look down at the comments, and her mother has liked the photo. And I'm telling you, I almost fell out on the floor. I mean, a young Christian lady with a picture that should have never been out anyway, and it's posted on social media, and the mom has hit the like button. And if I was to take it to this person, I know what the response would be. Well, Rob, that's nothing. And I had to be careful. I almost did this whole lesson because I said I don't want to get up there and just be going off on one of my tangents. But so many times in our dress, my pet peeve is yoga pants. If I see one of my kids wearing, if I was to see my daughter wearing yoga pants, that'd probably just be the end of I'd probably just follow it right there. They're not pants, okay? They're not even outerwear. But now the trend is now, I don't know if you've seen it, to wear either yoga pants or those pants that have holes in them and stuff, and they have holes, way up the thigh and stuff. Isaac has warned you this is going to be adult class, so I'm just going to tell you like it is. It makes me it makes me sick to see what people wear out. And I'm going to say it's not just, it'd be one thing, it's wrong for anybody to do it, but it'd be one thing if it was the world that's doing it. But what's so distressing to me is I see people that call themselves Christians, and that's the way they're dressing, going out to the world. And what does the world see, when they see that? What, for one, is what is your relationship with God if that's what you're doing? And two, what are you saying to the rest of the world? Does that make sense? Do you guys have anything to add to that?
Makes good sense.
Well, thank you. Sometimes I need a sanity check to make sure I've not gone off. I was riding with a Christian brother today and this morning for a while. I was in the car and I told him what I was going to talk about. I said, "Tell me, it's just not me. I'm not just that grouchy old man now." And he said, "No, I have the same thoughts, But it disturbs me because I want to be able to take my young children. I want to be able to tell my daughter, and I want to be able to say, look at this young lady at church, and look at these. And too many times in the church we're not able to do that. We're the ones that ought to be carrying that standard that's set forth in the Bible, and so many times we don't. But I'm giving examples of our speech and our dress. Are there others that come to mind when you think about it?
One time I heard someone say that if we kept an arm's length from the world, we'd be okay, but really the world keeps moving further from God. And if we're just an arm's length from the world, then we're not.
That's a very good illustration, Lord. And again, I don't want to go off on a tangent tonight. I could easily slide off the slope tonight, but there's things happening in our lifetime, guys, that I never dreamed would happen in our lifetime. Like I mentioned a few minutes ago, you read the scripture and you think about what happened when the angels come into light and they're in the appearance of men, and they come to man that they be brought out for them to have sex with. And you think, how could a time have been so vile that that's what happened? And then you look around us today and see what's happening in our world, and we are there. We are right there. And I never thought, I never thought when I was a kid and read it, I thought, man, well, at least I can take comfort in it. It'll never be that bad. But now we live in a time where if you want to call yourself a woman and go to the woman's bathroom, a lot of the world thinks that's okay. And things like that, go on and on. And it's just, and you're right, Laura. If we keep arm's length, we're following them off down that path. And as Christians, we're supposed to hold our ground over here on God's word by the standard that He sets.
Unfortunately, though, I think that you're talking about the dress and the clothes that women wear. Apparently, it's sad that that's becoming the norm because, I work in a law firm in downtown Nashville, and attorneys wear leggings, like pants. And it's not with long tops over them. It's like, they wear them like the tucked-in shirts. And I made a comment to the office manager about a year and a half ago, and I said, when did it become okay to wear leggings with pants? And then she sent out a blanket email to the staff, but not to the attorneys. But now, it's so many people you see wearing them, and to me, they're kind of decent.
I agree. It's not kind of, to me, it's not kind of indecent. It is indecent. There's just.
But unfortunately, I'm thinking, well, I used to dress up like I was going to church every day back in the 80s and 90s or whatever, and maybe times are changing, and I just need to get with it. And I think, no,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
but they don't, nobody cares.
No. I agree, it's sad.
The world's always making us, the liberal world is always pushing us, and I don't want to get on politics, but the world is always pushing us to accept something they want. And now they're pushing us to accept super late term abortions, where if they get us to not accept super late term abortions, oh, well, if it's in the first or second trimester, as conservatives, as long as they don't do the late term, we'll let them do the early ones. And they're just tricking our minds to think, you know, it's okay on any regard. You know, that's what they want us to believe. It's okay. And, you know, even the other day, how the governor from one state said, you know, it's okay to execute them right after they're born if that's what the parents choose to do. I mean, that's how far we have come as a society from the 70s when Roe versus Wade was passed on doing any abortions to now, you know, and it's just, if you accept the world and what they're telling you each and every day, you just, I mean, it's just, there's no stopping.
I don't know if y'all could hear Jason, but one of the big things in the news this week has been about late-term abortions. And they even went so far as having a discussion of possibly the baby being born and put in a queue waiting area while they decide if they want it or not. And it could even be basically executed after that. And his point, I agree with him, is they push for that, and then it seems like, well, if we allow it late third term, it's not so bad anymore. You know,
they want us to accept the first and second trimester. They push all the way to the end, and they want us to accept the first and second trimester.
Right. And again, these issues are very clear cut in the Bible. I mean, there's no doubt about it when you read the Bible that God recognizes life at conception, and anything past that to me is murder. And the other thing they do, in conjunction with Jason's point, is I can't stand the terms pro-choice, or what was the other one they were calling? They were calling this something else. They don't want to call it murder or death. They don't want to use those type of terms. They want to say pro-choice, or I forget the one they were using. It was when I was talking to the same Christian friend today. He was talking. When their baby was born. She's in 3rd or 4th grade now, but she was born with a cleft palate and had another birth defect. And they told her, they kept talking about you have options, because she's got two. She had a spot on her heart, and they said with 2 birth defects makes it a higher probability she'll have Down syndrome. And we can explore alternative options. And he said, I was young and I didn't know, and I kept saying, there's no cure for Downs. What do you mean alternate options? And finally got him to spit it out as they were talking about, you could abort the baby. And he said, no, we don't want to do that. Well, they have a young, healthy girl that, you know, was born with had that fixed and is in great health. But here was a young couple, and he said that they were pushing alternative options to us. I mean, just pushing it. It was basically, that was their preferred choice. And I agree with Jason. I think that's what the world is pushing for. And it's why even more important for us to hold the line.
That when you read one of our plans,
Yeah. Oh, there's tons of cases. I mean, I think it was Tim Tebow's mother came out. They thought there were going to be issues there and push them for abortion. They said, no, we're having a baby no matter what. And was born.
See, our tax dollars are going for that.
Yeah, that's.
Your dollars and my dollars are going for that.
Yeah.
You know,
Even an age.
Yeah.
we start out, and a lot of times we don't think about it when we teach our children, because we'll start out when they're real little, and, oh, she looks so cute with that little dress up to her.
Yeah.
And that is so cute. Well, as she gets older, all through her life, you say, oh, she looks so cute with that. And they learn these things as over time, and by the time they're grown, well, what difference it make, you know? I've taught all my life that I can just push the edge a little bit more.
You know, I mean, I agree with Charlotte, and we talked with Katie at length about, you know, and Alex, here's what you can wear and here's what you can't wear. You got to the point when Kate was little, she would say, "Look, Daddy, look." And I would turn and look, and then there'd be somebody, something I didn't want to see. She's like, "Why do they dress like that?" I said, "Kate, stop telling me to look," because we'd be out and you know how people dress nowadays. She's like, "Look there, look there, look." I said, "Kate, I know, but it's sad that you can't go out you can't even go out in public. You can't go to the park or a ball game, somewhere that you ought to better have some clean, wholesome fun anymore with your kids." And but again, I'm telling you, what is so distressing to me, that's what it's sad, but that's what I expect out of the world. I guess what really bothers me is when you turn around and you see that, and it's somebody that you go to church with, or they go to another church, and you see that, and it's Christian people, like we're saying, we've got to hold that line that's in the Bible, and not, guys, we can't drift off with the rest of them. We're going to be accountable, especially I think about it as a parent. We're going to be accountable for the kids we raise. And, growing up, I'm going to, again, my wife tells me I'm blatantly honest. She tells me I'm too honest sometimes, but, so many times you see families, I observed this with 3 kids, and 2 of them are great Christian going kids, and one of them gone off the deep end. I saw it time and time again. It's hard to raise kids in this world. It's tough. And so I don't mind saying, growing up, I knew Alvin and Sheila, and I was like, well, I know them, and not that they're the only ones. Some of you have all good kids, but I was closer to Alvin and knew them, and I asked Alvin, I don't know if he even remembers, Alvin, how do you raise 3 good kids? And he said, Rob, you got to set the expectations. You got to expect big things out of them. And I was a young parent when I asked Alvin that, and I think going to the Bible Bowl, and he told me, and I always took that to heart. I said, I'm going to have my expectations for my daughter and my son is, this is how you're going to dress, and this is how you're going to act. And do they always hit that mark? No, and neither do I. But that's the expectations. And as Christians and as Christian parents, I feel strongly we need to hold our kids to that.
But Rob, that's the thing. If you set those expectations and they don't meet it, they understand they haven't met it.
Yeah.
Whereas, I came today just looking around students I had. They have no clue that they're not living, the way they're living, and they just think that's the norm.
Yeah, I agree. And we're not showing, in many cases, we're not showing them any difference. I agree. We're talking about all these things. I know we're getting off a lot of hot topic items and stuff. The other thing with these sins is, I've heard a lot of preachers talk about it, and they said, hey, we beat up on the sin of homosexuality too much. But I tell you why I think that is. Here's what gets me. Look, okay, guys, I know I have faults, and if you got enough time tonight, I can name them for you. But what I don't do is sit here, hey, I eat too much. The body's a temple, we're supposed to take care of it. I'm working on that. I'm on a diet. I'm trying. But I'm not going to sit here and try to convince you tonight that it's okay to be out of shape. I'm not going to try to start a club and put some initials with it and tell you that this is all right. We don't try to hide our sin. We confess we got it and we work on it. That's why homosexuality as a sin bothers me so much, because it is pushed at you by that group so hard they want us to accept it. It's pushed nonstop. If they said, hey, I'm sinning and I'm going to try to do better, then I'd be more okay with it. But that's not what happens. It's a constant push with that sin and many of these other sins to try to get everybody to accept it. And again, as Christians, that's just where we simply must draw the line.
Well, adulthood is already accepted.
Oh, yeah.
So, you got the Supreme Court, federal, and the whole 9 yards. So
Yeah.
It's man's law now.
Yeah. It's man's law, you're right.
And what can we do as far as it being man's law? James and I work at the same place, and we have to keep our mouth shut when we deal with, I have a couple of guys that's homosexual that work for me. And what do you do in those cases? Sometimes you see things that they shouldn't be doing, but don't dare point that out. But if somebody else that's heterosexual may do the same thing, you can, it's just like abortion. I get convicted like that. As a Christian, you want to try to,
I know the quandary in Jim. I mean, it's hard. I mean, you know, I mean, it may be oversimplifying it, you know, do I go around and point out every instant I see? No, but I think we can make a big difference if we made our lives different, you know, and I'm not saying we go attack them or, you know, I've always, me and Jason joked about this. You go to the ball games and you have the guys outside, standing outside. If you go to a UT ball game, they'll be outside holding up a sign, all you people are going to hell. And I've had them with a long list of going to hell and screaming at people. You know, I don't think that's ever saved anybody. But I guess, you know, when you look at what the Bible calls on, it calls on us to take a stand and for us to be different. You know, I don't care how long they push on it, I'm not going to accept it as right. You know, I mean, I'm just not. They can harp on it, they can pass all the laws they want to. I'm not going to go confront every homosexual I see. I just don't think that's going to get me anywhere. If they come up and talk to me about it, I'm going to tell them, you know, I think I know what you're doing is wrong, it's a sin. You know, and I think that's all we can do as Christians is we have to hold the line that's in the Bible, you know, and not go along with the rest of the world. And, you know, if we all did it, I think it'd make a bigger change, you know, than you think. Are we going to change it overnight? No. I mean, our country didn't get into this mess overnight. You know, we're dealing with stuff that 20 or 30 years ago, I don't think any of us could have dreamed about we'd be dealing with it. If you'd have told me 20 years ago that we'd have groups men pushing to go in the women's bathroom, I'd have said, you're crazy, that won't happen. If you'd have told me we were going to debate whether you could lay a baby out on a table and talk about killing it, I'd say, no, that won't happen in my lifetime. You know, but that's where we're at.
You know, Rob, and Jesus, when he came, he gave the sinners. And I think that's the lesson we've got to take from this. It's difficult because abortion, homosexuality is so repulsive to us. But we need to be the people who are friends, who do treat them right, treat them with respect, but at the same time, never ever do we say that abortion or homosexuality, whatever, is okay.
Right.
It's a sin. If God calls it a sin, it's a sin.
Right.
But at the same time, just because somebody at work or somebody that you know is that way doesn't give you the right to make jokes about them, laugh about them at their back, to treat them unkindly, because you're never going to teach someone to treat them that way.
I agree. That's the point I was getting at, I guess, kind of with the guy hollering at the ball game. You're not going to convert anybody by attacking them or getting in a who's right argument, but we do hold treat them with respect, but hold the line. That's you know, not going to deviate from right here in the Bible.
What about me, the dog kind of showed one of the ladies who works there, I think she was kind of a leader in the dog pound, but she was talking about the wife, my wife, you know. She's the male of a couple here, who both each other's wife. So they didn't know anything about it, my wife.
Yeah.
She's a woman too.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I think it was Charlotte said about the dress. These people have been brought up this way. They don't know what's right here. A lot of them, they don't have the foggiest that what they're doing is not just perfectly acceptable.
Sometimes we let our children watch things on TV. We let our children watch things on TV. And
You only gonna see one.
that's what TV's doing to us.
Yeah.
They're trying to make us accept all these cultural wrongs.
Yeah.
But, and we let our kids watch them, and pretty soon, no, you know, that's all right, they do that.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, that's where they feel.
Yeah. So,
The main point though, Rob, is we're called to be holy, not called to be like the world.
right.
I know we fall short, we all do, but that's what we're called to be. That's our example we should be.
Lisa hit on, I was skipping ahead because I wanted to get to this point. No, I'm glad you said that it transitioned. We're called to be set apart. We're called to be holy. We're called to be different. And I mean, that's what the world has got to see. So we need to stop worrying about, you know, so many times we think I want my kids to fit in, or I want to fit in, or I want to be, you know, I want to be like this. If we're going that way, we're going the wrong way as Christians. You know, I had a cousin one time, you know, and I thought about this when when we were in school, he said, Rob, if you study real hard and make an A and I make a D, we both pass, you just work a lot harder. And, you know, sometimes as Christians, I think we kind of take that approach. Sometimes as Christians, you know, we spend so much time worrying about the minimum of what we can do, the minimum of what we have to do to get to heaven. But, you know, with something that important, You know, I don't, now don't get me wrong, if I get to, I've always said, if I get to heaven and I'm the janitor, I am good with that. I just want in. But I don't want, you know, I don't want to be right there on the line, you know, sitting there wondering what the call's going to be. You know, if this is the line, I want to try to live my life, you know, so that there's no question when my time comes on which side of the line that I'm on. You know, I want to be on Jesus' side. I don't want to sit there skirting the line as a Christian. Well, I think I've done just enough to get in. I mean, but that's how we live our lives so many times, you know, it's flirting with that fire. Was there any other hands up that I missed? I really appreciate your comments and stuff. I'm kind of skipping ahead. I think we got just a couple minutes left. He's calling time out. I'm gonna finish real quick anyway. Matthew chapter 7, verses 24 through 27. I'm sorry, no, I want to back up and read verse 21. And I've always thought this is kind of a scary verse. It says, "Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name, in thy name have cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works? And then I will profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity." You know, there's going to be a lot of, quote, good people on the judgment day. And, you know, they said, God, we've done works in your name. We've done this. We've done all these things. And he's going to say, depart. I don't know who you are. He's going to say, I couldn't tell you apart from the rest of the world. You know the parable where they plant the weeds and crop. He says, let them grow up together and then we'll separate them out. Well, that's what God is going to do. And on that day when he comes again, we need to make sure that he can tell the difference between wheat and a weed. One more thing, and I'll close with this. I found this story and I thought it summed it up so well. The point I was wanting to make tonight. It said a Sunday school teacher was telling the story of the rich man and Lazarus. She said that Lazarus sat outside the rich man's gate, covered with sores and begging for food, and that the rich man passed Lazarus without even seeing him. But when they both died, Lazarus went to heaven while the rich man found himself in hell, which the teacher described most graphically. When she had finished, she asked the children, "Now, which would you rather be, the rich man or Lazarus?" One of the students answered, "I would like to be the rich man until I die, and then Lazarus afterwards." You know, I think that describes a lot of Christians. We want to live while we're on this earth, we want to be the rich man, and when we die, we want to be Lazarus. It don't work like that. We're out of time, but I so appreciate your comments tonight, and I enjoyed the class, and I hope you did too. And if you will, bow with me for a close with a word of prayer. Dear Father in heaven, we're so grateful for tonight, for all you bless us with. Father, grateful for this group of Christians, Father. It's an encouragement to me to see people that want to come and every chance they can and worship and gather together and study your word, Father, and grow closer to you. Father, help us as we study tonight from your word. Help us to hold up that standard, not pointing ourselves as holy, Father, because we're sinful and we make many mistakes, but help us to do the best we can to be Christ-like, to let that be our goal and our standard, our aim. Knowing, Father, we'll fall short, but try every day to be as close as we can to that, not to conform to the world, that people look and see a difference and want to know why we're different and how they can be different and have a difference in eternity in this life afterward. Father, we're thankful, we're mindful of the brother's family and their loss. Father, I ask that you continue to be with them. Father, bless them in the coming days, Father, as they mourn. Give them good memories of the times they had. Be also with the Cook family as Miss Pat has passed, and we ask the same blessings for that and comfort for that family. Father, we ask that you be with Isaac and Brittany and Emmett. We're thankful, Father, for a healthy delivery and that all are doing well, and ask that you continue to be with them. Bless them. Father, help us as a brothers and sisters to wrap ourselves around that family and help them. Father, it's so difficult to raise a child. We just ask that you be with all the parents here tonight, Father. It's so difficult, Father, in this world with so many things pressing at our kids and so many temptations, Father, and it seems like the devil is everywhere. That you be with us as parents and help us, Father, to strengthen our kids and help them build that relationship with you that will stand the test of time, Father, that they and us, Father, after our life is over, will hear, well done, good and faithful servant. Father, this is a prayer for each of us tonight. Please forgive us of our sins when we fall short. Thank you for Jesus. It gives us hope. In his name we pray. Amen.